So I want to talk about how one of the first things that happened during the trumpets in the book of Revelation 8:6 is the water turns into blood. It's the first thing Moses does is turn water into blood in the Father's name. The Father did it. And then Jesus' first miracle is turning water into wine. Then the next thing that happens here is the wormwood turns everything bitter. All the water's bitter. And I could see that in Moses, God told him to take a special wood, put it in the water, and it purified the water so it could be, so people could drink it. Then Elijah was told by God, just like here in the end times, it says that everything became bitter after wormwood hit the water. According to what Elijah did, Elijah put salt in the water in order for the water to become life-giving. Then it says that the sun and moon were struck. This does remind me of this, but I think it's actually coming from somewhere else. I did notice that Jesus also was given something bitter to drink when he said, "I thirst," and they put like a sponge or something on hyssop or a reed or something, and they dipped it in something bitter. I think they called it wormwood, and he drank it, and then an earthquake occurred after he left. He said, "It is finished." His spirit departed. And then here we could see, this is what it reminded me of. The people saw the thunder and lightning and heard a trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke. They trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us or we will die." Moses says to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you and keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. In Revelation, it also speaks of an eagle. It says here on Mount Sinai that Moses went up to God, and God called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourself have seen what I did to Egypt and how I have carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me and fully keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession," which is interesting because it reminds me of the place where Jesus was when the water changed into wine was Cana. Cana means possession, zealous, and jealousy. That's what Cana means. Galilee means province, which is a place, right? So he said, "You will be my possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Reminds me of, you are a royal priesthood, a holy people, which is in 2 Peter. There are words that you are to speak to the Israelites. These are the words. Eagles. I carried you on eagle's wings. Go over here to, it says, "Woe, woe to the inhabitants of earth." Who says that? "As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair and called out in a loud voice, 'Woe, woe to the inhabitants of earth, because the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other angels.'" I had a really cool experience today where I just was on break from work and I saw a squirrel sitting on fluff. Now, what brought me to all this bitter water stuff was that I was eating something and I was drinking water, and as I ate it, it became bitter, more bitter, like salt, like a salt lick. And I was like, oh, that reminds me of, the Bible. And then, because everything does. And then I researched manna. Manna seemed to be very kind of strange to us still. We don't really, a blessing, but to us, very different than anything we've ever seen before. Online, they say it's like a mushroom. Well, I have photos I'm going to show of a squirrel who was sitting on fluff outside, and he had a big fluff in his mouth, and he kept climbing up trees in front of me as I was praising God in heaven outside. The wind was really blowing, and I was just saying, just praising God for all the good things he's doing for my family. He's the provider. And that's what I was being reminded of. The squirrel kept going up the trees, but on the side that I was, and I could see this big ball of fluff. And then he sat down by the tree, went over to the water and dunked this fluff into the water, and it was a perfect circle and it wouldn't change its shape. And he sat on a stump and started kind of eating or licking at this fluff that never changed its shape. Even as he went to consume it, it didn't disappear. And so he stuck it in a bush and took off. Well, I went downstairs very quickly to see what it was. I have pictures. I don't know what it is. It's not really bread because it actually went into the water and kept its shape. It looks like a mushroom kind of, but it doesn't seem like you can see any nibbles on it. It's kind of kept a mushroom shape. And I tried to break it apart a little bit. It won't break apart. It's almost like a sponge. So I'm not sure what it is, but I just left it there because clearly the squirrel thinks it's edible, and I think they do eat bread. I don't know. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that I spent this morning doing research on manna very early in the morning, and it just, brought me to Jesus is the bread of life. He's the provider. And then how the water changed into wine, how all the jars were placed before Jesus, which is interesting because the jar was placed before Jesus when he was hanging out with the lady, the Samaritan lady. She left her jar in front of him as she left at the well. All his friends, the disciples came up to him and they said, "Why don't you eat?" And he said, "I have spiritual food you know nothing about." Well, according to Exodus, when the manna happened, the quail and the manna came from the sky, as a remembrance, guess what they put the manna in? They put it in a jar and they placed it before God. And right before, Jesus says, I have food you know nothing about, like spiritual food. A jar was placed in front of him. I've had really a lot of spiritual warfare lately, and so I've just been leaning harder and harder into the Word, into the book, into God and His promises, and usually it brings me to these places, and it's probably because it's what I'm thinking about all the time. So it's no surprise, but I just can't get over the things that's out of my control that happens to completely match what I've been thinking about, in prayer with God about. Trying not to lean upon my own understanding, but there just seems to be some type of big, I don't know, there's a lot of puzzle pieces that look like they go together, and I can't quite figure out how to put them together because I don't have the understanding in my head, but I know when I'm in my relaxed states, usually it comes to me, God will start click, 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 because I'm overthinking it, I think. This is Linda of Christ is King Forever. May God be with you.